Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, The Meryl Weep Diaries. Today I'm going to be discussing a news story that aired yesterday, November 26th, regarding a set of twin girls who were born who had their DNA edited. You may even hear the term spliced. I think primarily in the news they're calling it, or they've chosen to use the term gene editing. And gene editing and gene splicing are basically the same thing. It is the insertion, deletion, or replacement of DNA at a specific site in the genome of an organism or cell. This is usually done in a lab using what are called nuclease. For some of you who may have watched my previous YouTube video about DARPA and the Supersoldier project, gene cloning, animal cloning, human cloning, I gave you a little bit on my background. I come from the biotech world where that is our primary work, is working with the human genome or genes, which is DNA, or proteomics, proteins, which are amino acids that are joined together to replicate things that are found naturally occurring in the body. So this news story sort of hit me yesterday because yesterday I had a set of twin grandsons who were born, and I also have a set of twin granddaughters who are 4 years old. And so when you think about babies coming into the world, it's kind of a scary thought to think that we are heading in the direction of designer babies, where we are altering their genetic makeup. I'm going to get into that a little bit in just a little bit, but I want you to watch these clips I have 3, and I hope it's not overkill. The reason I have 3 clips is because each one of these clips gives us a little piece of information that I want to touch on. The first 2 are from the local news, like the 5 o'clock news and the 6 o'clock news. And then the third clip is from the nightly news with Lester Holt. The reason why I recorded both is because it happened locally. I live in Texas, about 20 miles north of Houston. And so I want you to just watch these clips, and then I'm going to come back and talk to you about how this all ties into DARPA, the Super Soldier Project, and what this means for us in the future and where we are heading with transhumanism, altering our DNA, and the long-term effects and repercussions.
Rice University says it has opened an investigation into a professor who is linked to clinical work that's stirring controversy all around the world. This involves a case of creating the world's genetically edited babies. What does that mean exactly? Well, our Andy Sirota is joining us live near Rice University with more on this for us. Andy?
Bill, good evening. When you're talking about gene editing, you're talking about rewriting the DNA code, whether it's supplying a gene that's missing or disabling one that's causing problems. Rice University says it had no knowledge of Dr. Michael Dean's work. Tonight, the university also confirming to us that it has launched a full investigation into Dean's involvement in this research. He Jiankui, a Chinese researcher who once studied physics at the University of Houston, claims he helped produce the first ever gene-edited babies, altering the DNA of twin girls under a microscope while they were embryos. They were born earlier this month.
I feel a strong responsibility.
We can detect that months to years in advance.
Dr. Michael Dean, a bioengineering professor at Rice University, reportedly worked with Jiankui on the project in China. He was featured in this video posted to YouTube when he was honored with the Texas Academy's O'Donnell Award in 2012. The procedure is controversial and banned in the United States and most countries around the world. The risk, according to some scientists, is that it could permanently alter DNA for future generations. Rice University says the research raises troubling scientific, legal, and ethical questions. A statement reads in part, Regardless of where it was conducted, this work, as described in press reports, violates scientific conduct guidelines and is inconsistent with ethical norms of the scientific community and Rice University. We tried reaching Dean for a comment, but no one answered the door at his home. Jian says he is well aware of the moral and scientific consequences of his work.
I know this is probably going to be the world first. So if it's not safe or have any problem, it may rule the entire field.
There is also controversy in China. The university that owns Jian Kui's lab says the work violated ethics and standards, and it also plans to investigate.
Perhaps troubling claim from a Chinese scientist who claims he's made a major breakthrough that sparked controversy around the world. He says he helped a couple have twins whose DNA was edited during in vitro fertilization. Our Kate Snow has more.
The surgery worked safely as intended.
On YouTube, He Jiankui claimed he's done something no other scientist in the world has.
Two beautiful little Chinese girls named Lulu and Lala came crying into the world as healthy as any other babies a few weeks ago.
Twin girls, he says, from an embryo that was genetically edited, part of an experiment aimed at protecting children from ever contracting HIV. During IVF, a technology called CRISPR was used on embryos, disabling a particular gene that allows HIV to enter a cell. But the approach, restricted in the US and much of Europe, drew an international outcry.
There has been consensus that to take an embryo with altered genes and put it in a woman to create a child is just beyond the pale in terms of what's morally acceptable.
And that's what he says he's done.
That's exactly what he has said he's done.
The Chinese university where He was on leave said today he never reported his research to the school, as questions swirl about whether the procedure fully worked and whether editing the baby's genetic makeup could have unintended consequences, perhaps making them more susceptible to other diseases.
This is a slippery slope to designer babies. That if I start altering the genes of a child, I could alter other genes of a child.
He has released little evidence to back his claims.
I believe family need this technology, and I am willing to take the criticism for them.
A brave new world the world may not be ready for yet. Kate Snow, NBC News, New York.
Okay, so now that you've seen the clips, let me just first start off by saying that this type of research and experimentation being done on humans is not illegal in the United States and most of Europe. Places like China, they have conducted human experimentations. There are some places in Canada that has as well. Some years back, they had the first cloned baby. I think it was 2001 or 2002. They say it was the first one, but that was just the first one that they put out in the media, so to speak. They called this baby Eve. So the researcher has said that the research was conducted outside of the United States. I believe he said in Canada China, because China is looking to open an investigation as well. And the Rice University heads say that they knew nothing about this researcher and his research, and they're going to open a full investigation into it also. So the researcher has said that he is willing to bear the brunt of the criticism. And in his interview, you can see that he almost looked jovial, like he looked happy. He says this is the type of research that the world needs, and so he's not worried about the implications or the repercussions of what may happen to him. I personally believe that the reason he is not worried about it, well, let me preface it with this first. All of our media is controlled. They all have a narrative. They all stick to the narrative. Nothing makes the news unless it is green lighted or okayed by those who run the media. And it is 6 corporations who own every radio station, every television station, every satellite station. They're all under the umbrella of the elite. In fact, you can go on YouTube and search newscasters all saying the same thing. A lot of times the news around the world, it doesn't matter who the anchor is, they're all saying the same thing verbatim. I always say that the whole world is a stage. I sincerely believe that it is a possibility that this researcher is being funded by a governmental organization. I also believe that this is not in the media by happenstance. It's because they want to put it out there. They want to start having the conversations about it, because this is where we are headed in the future. Our military has already been doing gene splicing on human beings and genetically altering them. It says here in this article that the Pentagon is the primary funder of this type of gene editing research, that they have pumped more than $100 million into organizations who are doing this type of research, which is $35 million more than previously reported. Okay. Okay, so let's read a little bit of this. So it says, making the U.S. military the top funder and developer of gene modifying technology. The technology is capable of splicing DNA strands in order to insert, alter, or remove targeted traits and drive them through a population by ensuring all the offspring of the targeted organism inherit the alteration. Proponents of the gene editing technology say that it can be used to wipe out malaria-spreading mosquitoes, for example. Critics point out that the method could have unforeseen environmental consequences. Okay, so this is very important, because these babies who have had their genes edited, and they were said to be edited to prevent these children from having the capability of contracting HIV. And so there are going to be proponents who are for this type of testing, because you could potentially wipe out or greatly reduce the spread of this deadly disease. But you have to understand that it alters your DNA permanently. So the children who are born to these twins, their DNA will be altered, and so on and so forth. And so we're getting into an area that man should not get into. We're essentially playing God. And so they've already done this type of altering on mosquitoes. I'm sure you guys have seen stories about that in the news, where they have genetically altered the appearance of the mosquitoes, making them yellow in color, giving them 3 eyes, and making them wingless. Okay, with the premise being that their vision, I know with 3 eyes you would say maybe their vision would be heightened, but actually it creates sort of like a mirror effect, so they don't see as well. With them being wingless, they cannot fly. And with them being yellow, they look very different than other mosquitoes, with the premise being, in theory, that it would complicate their ability to mate. First of all, to be able to see their mate. Second of all, to be able to navigate to their mate. And thirdly, with them being yellow in color, that if a potential mate saw them, they would not want to breed with them because they look foreign. So this type of thing can have very dire consequences. So you may be able to wipe out a disease, but you may also wipe out the entire mosquito population that all. And some people might say, I don't see the big deal. What do we need mosquitoes for anyway? They're a nuisance. But everything that is in our ecosystem has purpose. God didn't create anything that did not have a purpose. And when you begin to eradicate or remove certain species of things from the ecosystem, it upsets it. So there are certain birds and certain fish that depend on mosquitoes as food. So if they didn't have the mosquitoes as food, then that species would fall off as well. There are male mosquitoes who do not, they don't suck blood, but they are pollinators. And in some countries, they pollinate more than bees. Like in subarctic terrains like Russia, the mosquitoes are the pollinators. They're also, when mosquitoes lay their eggs in water, their larvae eat the detritus that's on the top of the water. That's the decomposed organisms, and they kind of coagulate on the top of the water, and they can stop oxygen from getting below the surface of it. And so the larvae eat that. If it were not for the mosquito larvae eating that, then it would affect the fish that are in the water. So I know this is not a science lesson or whatever, but I'm just kind of giving you some context with where I'm going, how one thing directly affects another. So if we're just talking about the mosquito populations and the implications that altering its gene will have on our environment, what do you think altering the genes of humans by editing them and splicing them and inserting them and removing them is going to do for the genetic makeup or composition of human beings going forward? But this is all part of the agenda. In my previous video about gene cloning, animal cloning, and human cloning, I talked about a hybrid race of people that were on the earth in the days of Noah. That is where we are going now with transhumanism. The goal is to merge man and machine, to make a species of man, which is really just the seed of Satan, because everything that God does that is authentic and true and real, Satan tries to duplicate or mimic. And so he does not have any creative power of his own. God has his own creation. And so what Satan is doing is using man, those who will allow themselves to be used, to create his own species. The Bible said that in the days of Noah, so shall it be when the coming of the Son of Man is. And so, they are creating these hybrid species. That's one of the goals. The other goal is to merge man and machine. So Google says that by 2045, we will be uploading our entire minds to computers and our bodies will be replaced by machines. What they are trying to do, a lot of the elite and a lot of those who are in this Luciferian cabal and system are trying to escape the wrath of God. That was the whole premise around, some of the elite, like Walt Disney, having his head cryogenically frozen and waiting for the day that we have this technology. But you can't get around God. You cannot escape him. And so all of this is going to come to naught. But there are going to be those who buy into it. People are very excited about 3D printed organs and being able to live forever, having your consciousness uploaded, all of this stuff. And it's demonic in nature. The Bible says that it's appointed unto man once a time to die, and then comes the judgment. And so for those people who will choose to upload their consciousness, you have essentially taken the mark of the beast and sold your soul, because your soul is your will, your intellect, and your emotions. God put it into a body for a reason, because the body is just the housing of the soul. And so if you choose to put your soul or to give your soul over to this demonic system, you have essentially taken the mark of the beast. But I don't want to get off track, and I don't want this video to be too long. So back to DARPA and their investment into manufacturing these super soldiers. It says, DARPA for several years now has been trying to defy what nature can offer by finding ways to solve the limitations of the current gene transfer technologies and how to improve existing approaches in order for science to finally displace natural life. Displace natural life. So if we're displacing natural life, what are we substituting it for? An unnatural life or way of being. So the next couple of articles deals with the U.S. Defense Department and military bioengineering of these soldiers. So the experiment hopes to produce soldiers who require a fraction of the typical amount of sleep and who can cope under highly stressful situations. It also goes on to talk about one of these projects was to create software which could be uploaded directly into the brain. In other words, to give them a chip. This would give soldiers a heightened senses while also attempting to give them superhuman strength. So it says it would transform the weakling into a veritable super soldier. The super troop exoskeleton offered protection against a .50 caliber bullet. It incorporates audio, visual. It has fiber optics from the head to the fingertips. The soldier would take a dog tag that had been embedded with a chip, would insert it into the slot under the chest armor, thereby loading his personal program into the battlesuit's computer. So again, this is the merging of man and machine, giving him the ability to shoot, to move at superhuman speeds. Also, it says that this suit is unlike anything in the history of warfare. It has embedded sensors, antennas, computers, 3D audio to indicate where a fellow warfighter is by the sound of his voice. It goes on and on to say that President Barack Obama said in 2018, I'm here to announce that we are building Iron Man. When the president said this has been a secret project we've been working on for a long time, he wasn't kidding. The next article goes on to say that they have been doing gene splicing with dolphin genes and with the genes of owls to give soldiers supersonic hearing, to give them night vision. This other article says that let's see here. The U.S. military has announced a $12 million project to carry out secret experiments to build a super race of soldiers. It shows a picture there of Captain America, who we know was a genetically enhanced soldier. He started out as a weakling who couldn't make the cut. They did gene splicing on him, and he became this veritable Superman. So this is just where we're headed, right? So the article goes on to talk about the 3 areas that slow soldiers down on the battlefield: pain, wounds, and excessive bleeding. And so they came up with this vaccine that could greatly reduce their pain. They would inject it into them 10 to 13 seconds later. There would be no pain for 30 days. So it says this type of vaccine would allow the warfighter to keep fighting as long as the bleeding could be stopped. So to develop new ways to try to stop the bleeding, they initiated another program that involved injecting millions of microscopic magnets into a person, which could later be brought together into a single area to stop bleeding with the wave of a wand. So another idea was to find a way to get a wounded soldier to go into kind of a hibernation or suspended animation until help arrived. So this would give the soldier hours or days to survive blood loss and avoid going into shock while awaiting evacuation, or triage. Bears hibernate. Why can't man? Could a chemical compound produce such a state? They're not going to tell you that they would use the genetic insertion of bear DNA, the gene that triggers the bears to go into hibernation. So it says, what if soldiers could have 10 times the muscle endurance of enemy soldiers? What if they could leap 7 feet or do 300 pull-ups? So sleep, was a big part of this study. It said that they wanted to work on ways to create a 24/7 soldier. So one who required little or no sleep for up to 7 days. And because, the enemy needs sleep. So it would be beneficial for the United States soldiers to not have to sleep. So it says whales and dolphins don't sleep. As mammals, they would drown if they did. So unlike humans, they are somehow able to control the lobes of their left and right brains so that while one lobe sleeps, the opposite lobe stays awake, allowing the animal to swim. It says, while some DARPA scientists ruminate over the question of how humans might one day control the lobes of their own brain, other scientists experimented with drugs like modafinil. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, modafinil, a powerful medication used to counter sleep apnea and narcolepsy to keep these warfighters awake. So this is what our military is doing. And I always say it's soft disclosure. They always put it into a scenario, like a what if scenario, but they're showing it to us in all of the movies that we watch. It says the scientists would implant a chip into a rat's brain to see if they could remotely control the animal's movements. This has already been done. They have been able to do that, to control a rat remotely, also to transfer cognitive thought from one mouse to the other. So it says the objective of this effort is to use remote teleoperation via direct interconnections with the brain. Again, we're talking about chipping. The bigger objective was to allow future soldiers to communicate by thought alone. So I told you all about telepathy and how they're always looking for people who possess these traits, and then they study these people so that they can try to reproduce the brain waves that allow these people to have these special kinds of abilities. So it says that the bigger objective was to allow them to communicate by thought alone. So imagine a time when a human brain has its own wireless modem so that instead of acting on thoughts, warfighters have thoughts that act. So if you can implant a thought into a human being and they act on the thought that's been implanted through radio waves, sound waves, whatever. It says an adversary might use brain technology in military applications. An extreme example would be remote guidance or control of a human being, merging of man and machine. Other critics said that the quest to enhance human performance on the battlefield would lead scientists down a morally dangerous path. They are not really concerned about ethics or morality. The scientist said he disagrees because how is having a cochlear implant, like a hearing aid, that helps the deaf hear any different than having a chip in your brain that could help control your thoughts? When question about unintended consequences like controlling humans for nefarious ends, Goldblatt insisted there are unintended consequences for everything. So I'm just going to tell you that you already have people who are being controlled by chips in their brain. And some of them are your leaders. Some of them are your entertainers. And so I just want everybody's eyes to be open, because there are too many people right now walking around with their eyes wide shut, and there's no reason why any of us should be asleep, because they're putting this information right in your face. They're doing things right under your nose. And the goal of the elite is for everyone to take the mark of the beast and to be chipped. They want a society, a slave class of people that can be controlled by its leader. And this new breed of soldiers are going to be his and the one world government's enforcement agents. So he hasn't yet made his appearance, but it's on the horizon. And so I tell people all the time, if you don't know Jesus for yourself, get to know him.